Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic, super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 265. I'm here with William Owens. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kyle. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I was very pleased to meet you at Midwest, and I wish I remembered the episode number that you were on from Midwest Live. It was in the 220s somewhere, but it was great to meet you. We closed down the place, didn't we?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. Midwest is always a great time, and I'll tell you what, you meet new friends, you see old ones, you hear great music. There's nothing better.
For people who know your name on paper but have not met you before, where are you originally from? Where are you from now?
I am originally from Gary, Indiana. Okay, I'm from the Midwest, and I moved to Texas in 1985 after I finished college. I attended Vandercook College of Music in Chicago, and moved down to South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, and most people don't know this about me. They know me as a composer, which is great. But a lot of people don't know that I actually did taught. I actually did teach. I spent 30 years in the field, and I was in the Rio Grande Valley. Mentioned that, and I was in West Texas for a time. And my wife and I came to where we currently are now, the DFW Metroplex, where I finished out my teaching career in 2015.
Awesome. And I see recently that you're a saxophone player.
Yes, sir, you did.
Nobody's perfect. We'll give you that
Ah,
point.
well, I'll tell you what, we all try.
I love that. I've told all my saxophone friends the saxophone is so stinking hard. When you're a trumpet player and you only deal with one hand, and then you got to deal with the multiple hands, man, learning saxophone was so hard for me.
Oh, not really, just one hand at a time. It's not that bad.
And I was telling people, I feel like we're going to talk about you as a composer and some of your music. We're going to be talking about advice to band directors, talking about programs on the country, doing honor bands, like kind of lots of things
Mhm.
that you've had come with your experience. So I'd like to start with just a general overview question for as someone who's seen many high level programs, talking elementary school, middle school, high school, college. What are some sort of traits that you see in band directors at these high level programs?
The biggest thing I've seen, Kyle, is consistency. I mean, successful directors, they do the same things and they practice the same good habits over and over. It's a routine. It's a process, particularly with warm-ups. The warm-ups are very consistent. They're very concise. And every single aspect of a warm-up that I've seen with the really high quality programs, every single aspect has a specific objective to whatever skill they want to teach the students or whatever repertoire they want to prepare. Couple of other qualities I see in these good folks are they just have an insatiable thirst for knowledge. They're just constantly wanting to know more. There's an old saying, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And these people, you'll constantly find them, at the conventions. We talked about the Midwest Clinic earlier. They'll be at their own state conventions, and they are around people, like-minded people, like themselves, who are goal-oriented, who are proactive, and who just want to build great programs and do great things for their kids. And one really important quality that I see in these directors is that they are not afraid of criticism or rejection. So many of our teachers, sadly, they fear, criticism, or they fear getting told, ah, crap, do that one over again. Last time. Oh, I'll get it right
You're
this time.
you're saying it great. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like what you're saying is awesome.
Okay, then this will, okay,
Yeah.
then this will do it. Whatever comes out, comes out. We'll do it this time. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and one very important trait, with these good folks, is they don't fear criticism. They're not, they're never afraid of being told what deficiencies there might be in their teaching or in their approach.
Mm.
And because they understand, listen, that's the way you're going to grow. If you're always being told everything's great, everything's going wonderful, you don't grow, you don't improve, you don't get better. So that is huge for those people.
I love that. So you kind of went through three things there, and all of them I had some comments I want to have a little discussion about. Let's work backwards. So that whole always growing, sort of failing, right? Being okay with failure or rejection or however that comes up. I think a lot of that manifests on people who have a hard time putting a clinician in front of their group. They feel like if I put somebody else in front of my group, they might do something differently and I might look weak. But as I've said before on the podcast with other people as well, I think it's the opposite. Having somebody in to work with your band shows that you're not the keeper of all knowledge and that you're strong enough to step aside and let them
Ain't,
learn from somebody else.
ain't that the truth? I loved putting clinicians in front of my group. And, we did it on an annual basis back when I was teaching, and there was nothing more thrilling for me than for someone else to come in with a different set of ideas or a different perspective or a different set of eyes. Because no man or woman is an island, no one person knows it all. And bringing in a clinician doesn't make you look weak. I mean, that is the furthest thing from the truth. If anything else, it makes you look strong. I mean, it helps you. I mean, it edifies you in front of your students and your colleagues because you're willing to accept other ideas and you're willing to listen.
So
I mean,
there's another part of this that I struggle with. I had a guest in doing an All-State one year, and I asked that same question: what's something you see with high-level programs around the country? And they said their directors are never happy. The
mhm,
directors are never content. Like they're always looking for the how to improve.
absolutely.
Um, and one thing I struggle with is how am I content? Like, what is the difference between staying where you are and not improving? But also at some point you need to be happy and grateful for what you're hearing and your program at the time, right? So, that I think that balance is a pretty hard one.
All right, this is a bit of an oxymoron, Kyle.
Would you
Directors.
call me? Would you call me?
Yeah, right. So, oh, right. Okay. All right. This is a bit of I'll rephrase, an opposite.
I love
Okay.
that.
In that directors are what I like to, I've always referred them as happily dissatisfied.
Yeah, that's great.
While they're never ever real, I mean, while you're just always reaching for the ultimate, for the optimum result. That'll be frustrating, but I'll tell you what, the journey is just always exciting and they're going to be happy making the run.
That's one thing I'm working on. I've always been good at trying to grow to the next thing, but I've not always been happy. I look back and it's like, I wish I'd enjoyed that season of the
Mhm.
program because it was great, even though we were growing to the next thing.
Right.
Because, there are times when certain sections will get better next year. Certain parts of your program will be better, but also other parts might be worse because you have humans coming in and leaving. And no matter how good your program or system is, there's going to be some ups and downs within the program because it's just human nature.
That's absolutely correct. And if you've been in place for a very long time, you'll know better than anybody. It works in cycles.
Yep. Um, And then the last thing, going back, the first thing you said was about warm-ups. I've seen programs that are consistent and they do exactly the same warm-up every single day. And when I observe that band, the kids are checked out in the warm-up. Like they're not engaged because it's exactly the same thing every day. And I've seen ones that vary and are different, month to month, and the kids are more engaged. So any tips, for people who are looking to make their warm-ups engaging, but also steeped in the fundamentals?
Well, I think the second part of what you just said, Kyle, was exactly it. Just putting little variations on it from time to time instead of just doing the same everyday, non-changing routine. And it's going to change anyway because as the repertoire changes, and like you said earlier, as the personnel changes, a really conscientious director is going to be very, it's just going to be very attuned, to how they set up their warm-ups and what they do for their students to get them from point A to point B.
The next area I want to kind of ask you about was circles around doing honor bands, and as someone who has much of experience as you do doing honor bands, I'd like to first hear about maybe a couple pieces that are maybe some of your go-to pieces that usually work, whatever grade level you want to go at is fine with me. And also maybe some keys to, okay, you're doing an honor band. What are some things that directors should keep in mind as they're preparing for honor bands?
Yeah, sure. Well, a couple of my favorite go-to pieces. I'll tell you a couple of mine, and I'll tell you a couple of others. One of mine over the years has been a piece that I wrote. It's a year now. It's a grade 1.5, Carpathia, about the rescue ship of the Titanic. It's very exciting. It's energetic. It's got a brief, really lovely slow section. And, it's just, I like explaining the history of the Titanic to the kids and the rescue ship Carpathia about as much as I like actually teaching the music. So,
Well, let's stay on that one for a minute because you're really good at this because that's actually on our list for later. And Leslie Moffat from Washington put in that this is a piece she wanted us to talk about. So we're gonna have a listen to it here in a second. I did not realize that was the boat that saved over 700 lives of the survivors from the Titanic. So, anything else you want to say about the piece before we listen to it?
Well, no, not much really. We can just listen, but like I say, it starts slowly and forebodingly in the beginning, and then it immediately takes off as the Carpathia takes off to go rescue the survivors. And then the big dramatic scene in the middle is the Carpathia arriving up on the scene where the ship is sinking, and then they rescue all the people they can, and then the energetic ending, or the energetic ending, basically represents we've got who we're going to rescue. Let's get people to safety.
And so many kids love history, so when you bring something like this into a piece, it's really effective. All right, let's listen to it. Here's Carpathia. Okay, so after Carpathia, what's another piece you like to use?
One I like to use is a grade 3 that I did several years ago. I call it Great Wall. And it's a little bit of, it goes into a little bit of the history of the Chinese army from the 15th century and how it evolved, from being basically a laughing stock of a fighting force to one of the world's greatest fighting forces. And it's energetic, it's bombastic at the beginning, it's very tender in the middle, and it's a programmatic work, and it's lots of fun to work on with the with the older kids really, and with the advanced middle school groups. So
Well, I'll say you're very good at this because we didn't plan this part, but then this one is also on our list. So we're going to take a minute and listen to this as well. I wrote down in my listening 8 percussionists. Maybe
yes.
you can combine something, but you need 8 players, G minor, and flute and bassoon solos. I love
Mhm.
that, and I love that in your works, especially at the grade 3 and below, that things are cross cued. If you don't have a bassoon player, you don't have to write it out; it's already in tenor sax and all that. I love that. All right, let's listen to at least part of it. Here's Great Wall. Okay, so when you're doing honor bands and you're doing some works that are not yours, what are some of your favorites?
Okay, here's a few of my favorites. Brian Balmages has a wonderful one that I love. It's a grade 1.5 that he calls Rhythms and Riffs.
Mm,
And there was a fairly new one by a wonderful young composer from the Baltimore area, Adrian Sims. He calls it a builder's dream. I like that one because it's cool and it's not gimmicky. We try to look for the fun tunes, and this is a fun tune that is also a serious piece of music for younger musicians. So, I mean, the cool and the serious, is very nicely balanced in that piece. And then one of my favorites is a tune by a really good composer friend of mine, Mr. Timothy Lose. And if he sees this, he's gonna laugh. He already knows which tune I'm. It's Fiesta Española is a wonderful piece. So, and he really captures the Latin flavor with it. With allegro beginning, allegro ending, and a beautiful lyrical middle section in it.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about you as a composer as well during this. And for where I want to start it is, I think there's a lot of band directors who forget that many of the composers of this music are just a phone call away, just an email away, right? So and I know you do in-person clinics. I know you do Zoom clinics. A lot of people do that. I just want to encourage people that if you're, look up the composers and see if you can find a time for them to connect with your band. I think for people to see the composer and hear from them is so valuable for students.
Oh, absolutely, you can do that. And most composers, I'll tell you what, all the ones that I talk to and that, I share ideas and thought with, we're always very willing to email you. Me, I'll
Mhm.
send you my phone number, you can call. And I do a lot of Facebook messaging with people, and There's nothing to fear there. I've had people tell me, well, I don't bother you compose. I'm just so busy and little old band director me calling the great composer. Look, hey, look, people are people. So just give us a call, give us an email, and much more often than not, you're going to find out that we will respond, and you're going to have a good time talking to us. Me, I'm the guy next door. After this interview, I'm gonna go out and mow the lawn. Okay, so there.
At least you live in a place where it's warm enough to mow the lawn.
Right.
Okay, so some more on the composition side of things. Some advice that you might have for either for band directors who are looking to start composing or for young composers, people sort of like, you're further along in the compositional journey and figured some things out that work for you. What's some advice you have for some youngers?
Well, this first one is going to be a lot easier for band directors than young composers. But my first piece of advice is know the instruments.
Mhm.
Okay, now you don't have to play every instrument beautifully. William Ravelli used to say, be able to play one or two good tones on every single instrument. And just know a little bit about the functionality of each instrument. So because when you sit down and start writing, you can write sensibly and you can write practically with a little bit of knowledge. The second thing I would say is especially if you're just beginning, I would say start small. If you feel like you want to get out there and write a great big symphony orchestra piece or concert band work, then you go ahead and do that. But my advice would be start small, say with a flute quartet or a trumpet trio and just get an idea of how parts fit together and and how certain sounds can come together and the more you do that, the more ideas you'll pick up, and the more apparent things will become as move forward.
So, sort of a follow-up question to that. You're great at writing multi levels. I mean, I guess I'll say this as, difficult music and simpler music. So many composers have a hard time writing simpler music, right? Because there's less tools in your toolkit. Some advice for writing music for the younger bands.
Well, for the younger bands, I would say just look at some of the pieces that already exist. And here again, you mentioned band directors who are getting into composing. They're gonna be a little bit more familiar with this because they've been in the field and they know what these little kids can and can't do.
Mm.
And what you do is what I did was I just asked a lot of questions. I made a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and I just asked a lot of questions. And I did a lot of score studying. I just looked at what people, before me had done and looked at and studied those techniques and studied those approaches. And just like on your instrument, I like to compare composing to, practicing your instrument. I mean, you got to practice if you're going to get better at it. Okay, just do it a little bit, and you won't always be surprised. You won't always be happy the first time, the second time, or the third time. James Barnes would say, listen, just keep writing.
Mhm.
Just keep writing. If you don't like what you wrote, throw it away and write something else. And yeah, just like anything else, you just got to practice. You got to go through the ugly to get to the pretty.
I love that. Just keep writing. And I know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyway. You take commissions, right? So, if someone was looking to commission with you, obviously they're going to reach out to you. What are some things that, from a composer standpoint, that's helpful when a band director reaches out for a commission? Some steps they should go through to make the process as smooth as possible.
It's actually really quite simple. A couple of questions we'll ask is what's the style of the piece? What's the occasion? And then we'll go through that. And most of my clients have been very flexible in that. Basically, you just write the piece you want, and they'll give you a few guidelines. But what you want to be careful of is approaching a composer and saying, "Well, I've got great flutes, so write it. So write this level for flutes. Oh, my trombones are awful this year, so write a really easy trombone part." And you don't want to, I don't encourage composers to, write hybrid pieces like that because, like we said earlier, personnel changes from year to year. And if you've been in place for a good long time, you understand that that hybrid piece that you may get written now won't work in 5 years. And so basically just kind of agree on a general grade level for the entire group. and then you go from there.
Advice for band directors who maybe have smaller bands in the music they're looking for. This one's kind of off the topic of what we have planned here, but so say you have a wind band of 30 kids versus the same exact level of 100, right? What are you looking for differently in the music beyond that it's playable by them?
Okay. Well, actually, not so much different. Just and it depends on how strong are those 30 musicians. My advice there is just be very honest and be very thorough about the strengths and the weaknesses of the ensemble. And the second thing is just do your research on the literature and just be really excited and just be very passionate about what you want to give to your musicians, because here's the thing. uh Great music is great music. I mean, it can be Rocky Point Holiday, or it can be my little bitty grade one Rust Belt. And I mean, if you're excited about it, if you're passionate about it, it's going to work, because it'll just be a lot easier to broadcast or to pass on to the students. And to know basic things about the composition, know who composed it, know a little bit about the style, know a little bit about the history.
I love that. So you mentioned Rust Belt. I have a follow-up question to get to, but you mentioned Rust Belt. So for people who have not listened to that, tell us a little bit about it and we'll listen to it.
Rust Belt. Well, here again, I was just looking to write an appealing piece for the beginning developing student, and I wanted this one to be a little bit different. I wanted to have a little bit of the cool factor.
Hmm.
And it's got a couple of little sound effects, and I wanted to do a little bit of that, but at the same time, I didn't want it to be gimmicky. Okay.
Yep.
I grew up in a Rust Belt town, so I kind of had some images in my head going in on this project. So that's pretty much just what brought it about.
So it's an industrial sounding.
Yes, sir.
And I did want to mention one of the things my wife looks at because she teaches beginning band up through eighth grade is how many independent parts there are at once. And she's
Mhm.
like, this piece may be a grade 0.5, but there's only two independent parts versus being three independent parts. And I did want to mention, I think on this one, there are sections where you have three kind of different parts happening at once, just something for people to consider as they check it out. All right, let's listen to it. Here's Rust Belt. What is the compositional process that you go through when you're starting a piece?
Well, in the beginning, I've got a little sketchbook that I actually keep by my bed, because ideas come at the craziest times in the wee hours. And so I keep that little sketchbook, and I'll just jot things down at the beginning, just little bitty ideas, just little bitty melodic passages. And then after that, I'll go to the computer. And a very basic formula of mine is to just do a few measures of melody, and then a bass line, and then you put in your harmonies and your counter rhythms and your counter melodies and your percussion. I think it's really important to write the percussion parts along with the wind parts, because they are equally important. I've talked to colleagues of mine who will write wind parts and come back and put in percussion. I'd like to just do it all along at the same time. And but it's a simple process.
Next, we're going to get to a couple pieces that I know we talked about that we want to include. The first one is going to be Destined to Fly. This is, a lyric work grade 2 that you wrote for, a departed student in a program. B flat major, E flat major, for percussionists. I just tell you in preparing for this was the first time I heard it. It's gorgeous. I love it. We're going to be buying it. I think it's a great piece of music. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I certainly can. First off, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And this one, I usually get asked, what are some of your favorite pieces? And my usual response is whichever one I'm currently working on. This one became one of my favorites, and I'll tell you why. Because I actually got to know the director, Randy Loran, who commissioned the piece for this young man who had passed on all too soon. So the piece was for him. The title was inspired by their theme for their spring concert. They had a theme for the spring concert. This year, that particular year's spring concert theme was dedicated to their fallen bandmate Juan, and the theme was "Fly, Juan, Fly." So the title I picked for it, was based on that. I'd say a couple of months later, after that, I received a call from the band director's mother. Okay, I got a phone call who had informed me that Randy himself had passed away from a long lingering disease. So this piece all of a sudden became a dedicatory piece for two people rather than for one.
Wow.
And every once in a while, I chat with Randy, the band director. I chat with Randy's mom, Rafaela is her name. And we'll email and we'll Facebook, just a quick hello or something like that. But all this time later, we're still in touch, which brings the piece closer to me.
Well, it's gorgeous. Let's listen to it. This is Destined to Fly. The next piece we're going to do, you wrote for the 2025 Arizona 8th grade All-State Band for middle school, right? Middle school All-State Band. I wish Maine, where I live, had a middle school All-State Band. I think my wife and I have had that discussion before. I just love the students at a younger age getting together. Is that pretty common around the country that most states have a middle school All-State Band?
It's becoming more and more common. It wasn't so much about 10 years ago. And we've seen state like Louisiana, for example, has, just recently adopted a middle
Hmm.
school program. And some of the longer ones have been from Georgia. They've got a very strong middle school all-state system, as does Michigan. So those are good benchmarks to look at,
Some of the
for
models. Yeah, that's great. So this piece you wrote for them is called No More Forever. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. Story about Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. And I love Native American history. I love American history, and many of my pieces are, based on, some period or some event in American history. And this goes back to where they were basically, being evicted from their homeland, by the settlers. And it chronicles their attempt to escape to Canada. And it's very Native American themed and Native American flavored. While the themes are all are all original compositional material. They're very much based on Native American songs and Native American folklore. So it's got that sound. It's got that feel.
I want to tell you, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Every time I look away, I'm feverishly writing notes because I'm going to forget everything that you're saying. So please don't think that I'm being inattentive. I'm doing my homework. All right, let's listen to it. Here is No More Forever. When I put up on Facebook that we are going to be meeting and asked for people to jump on for pieces, a bunch of people jumped right on. So we're going to do a couple of those now as well. Garrett mentioned Storm Chasing, which is a beginning band grade half piece that uses a siren. That's super cool. Rain stick. And of course, depicts people chasing storms like twisters.
Mhm. Yep, that it does. And I had a lot of fun with that one. That piece has no eighth notes other than in percussion, if you'll notice.
Yeah.
And I wrote that for a friend of mine. And we were discussing it would be really neat to just kind of have a piece about, that would be about storms and be about tornadoes. And I thought, you know what, let me see what I can come up with for you on that one. And so that was the idea. Now, here again, this program that the program that we're talking about that this was for, they begin in fifth grade. And so it was very appropriate for them. And we had a good time with it. We had our little premiere at the spring concert, and the kids had a great time and had a great big old siren. I think the siren was bigger than that little girl was. She got behind there and she's cranking on that thing and on. It was hilarious. It was a sight.
What state was that in? Like, were they in like Tornado Alley or anything, or is it?
I was here in Texas.
Okay.
In Texas.
So tornadoes are a thing.
Well, they sure can be.
Yep.
You got Tornado Alley coming down through Kansas and Oklahoma and Nebraska, and it kind of ends in North Texas, but we,
Yep.
get a good taste of it.
So you weren't tempting fate by writing this piece, though. Things have turned out okay.
So far, so good.
All right, let's check it out. Here's Storm Chasing. So Tony responded with his first go-to march is your Synergy March, which I'm sure a lot of people, this is their first go-to march. And the publisher writes, this spirited concert march begins with a crisp melody and bold accompaniment. As it moves into the middle section, brass and woodwinds are featured separately, with percussion serving as a link between the two. Finally, the three groups combine to drive forward to an energetic, synergistic finish, excellent for teaching march style with only 6 notes.
The true definition of synergy.
I love that. So is there anything past that we need to know about it?
Okay, no, that's very much it.
All right, let's check it out. Here's Synergy March. I think one of the things that I know I struggle with, and probably band directors around the country and the world struggle with, is this balance of playing new music. Composers like you are writing great music that we should be exploring and listening to all the time. Every day there's stuff coming out, but then there's also this wealth of knowledge and literature that harkens back to our history as well. So I'm going to ask you for a couple composers or a couple pieces that you really like that are older pieces of music.
Oh, that one's easy. Uh, there's a wonderful piece called Sundance, and it's written by a wonderful mentor and a dear friend of mine, Quincy Hilliard. It's an overture piece. It's written by, it was published by Southern Music Company. I believe they exist now in Missouri, but they were in San Antonio for many years. But Sundance by Quincy Hilliard is an older one that I'm sad to say, doesn't get played anymore. And this is one of the ones I'd like to see make a comeback because it's really wonderful. It's just really fine. It's well written. It sounds good. It's just a cool tune. It's really great. I've got a couple more if I can.
Please.
My personal favorites is Anthem for Winds and Percussion by Claude T. Smith. And, that was my first exposure to odd meter. And that piece came out published by the old Jensen company from Wisconsin back when I was in high school. So I played that in high school. And it was just a neat experience. I mean, the 7/8 just blew my mind. It was different. It was cool. It was wonderful. It was refreshing. And that was just neat. And one of my personal favorites of the old school music is the American Folk Rhapsodies by Claire Grundman. His number 3 is my personal favorite of the 4.
I love that.
Very melodic, it's very tuneful, it's very soulful, and it's very American. It's just really cool. I like it. So those are 3 pieces I'd like to see make a comeback.
I love that. And just to kind of jump back to Quincy Hilliard as well, if anybody doesn't know Quincy, you should check out his stuff for sure. I did an episode with him. It was number 186. If anybody wants to go back and listen to a full hour plus of a similar interview as this with Quincy, that was wonderful. One more question before we get to the last piece that we're going to do of yours in this session. And again, I appreciate your time very much, as I know our listeners do. Could you highlight a program or a band director that you think does a great job that you'd like people to know about?
I'll tell you what, there were a couple that, if it's okay, I can tell you one who was a huge influence to me, and I love telling people about this lady. Was my high school band director, Ann Betts. And what I learned from that lady, I carry to this day. It was just it was a wonderful relationship. I took private saxophone lessons from her, and I considered her one of my very good adult friends. And she was probably responsible for me attending Vandercook College. She herself was a Vandercook graduate. And she would encourage me to go to the functions they would put on for high school kids. And so, I mean, I became very familiar with Vanderbilt years before I actually enrolled. So, I thank my high school band director. She was just very influential, and I'm just very grateful for what I learned from her and the time I was blessed to have spent with her. You know what? Oh my golly, there are several. Now, but I'll tell you what, there's one gentleman that I kind of looked at from the sidelines for years. He's retired now, and that, I just thought, embodied as well as being a fine educator, just being a phenomenal human being. And that gentleman is Greg Bim, the retired band director from Marion Catholic High School in Chicago Heights, Illinois. There were a couple of moments that just really impressed me about that gentleman, and one in particular, I'm gonna take you back to about 1985, if that's cool.
Mm.
There was a marching band festival down at Illinois State University, and it was raining cats and dogs that day, but it went on. The festival went on, and the marching bands were out there, and the directors would be like under a tent or in the press box watching the action, from wherever they were. And then the Marian Catholic band came out there, and Mr. Bim was right there on the sideline, no umbrella, getting soaked with his kids. And I'll tell you what, when I saw that just absolutely, it blew my mind and it touched my heart.
I love
And
that.
yeah, oh yeah, and little bitty moments, little bitty things like that. And from that moment on, I just, I watch the program, I study the program, and I've seen him at the conventions. I get to speak to him at the Midwest Clinic and other conventions like that. And just his general approach, the way I just love the way he treats people. His passion for music, it's just absolutely magical, and just a really fine human being.
That's why he's considered one of the legends, right? Yeah. All right.
Not just because he's a great musician, but he's a great man. And yeah.
I love that. So again, thank you for being here. We're going to listen to one more piece, which I think, again, I wrote gorgeous. I think this is truly stunning. I wrote that it's a grade 2.5. I didn't see where it actually was listed, so I could be low or high on that. It is about 4.5 minutes long, E flat major and G minor, called "In This Beautiful Place." This was recommended by Philip Walter, who's actually a band director in Alaska. He's actually sent me pictures of Denali Mountain as he's hiking and listening to this podcast at the same time. He's like this outdoorsman who also is like this growing band director, enthusiast. So he wanted us to listen to "In This Beautiful Place." So this is how we're going to finish it off. You could tell us a little bit about the piece.
Okay. It was written for a band director friend of mine. And it was written to honor the loss of a student. And writing pieces like that is never easy, particularly, young people who are just taken all too soon. And so we did it for that young lady, and then she was an honor student. She was a member of the color guard. And at the premiere, I should say, it was a really emotional time. Her family was there, and it was just a really beautiful gathering.
Well, let's listen to it again. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time very much. Here's "In This Beautiful Place." We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.